How's it going? I'm your host, Damian Turley, and you're listening to Forest Found Stories podcast. It's good to be back. I took quite a bit of time off from doing this. I kind of missed it. I was experiencing some summertime sadness bullshit, and I'm glad to be on the other end of it, at least most of the way on the other end of it. For those of you who don't know, summertime sadness, it's like the same as winter depression, but completely fucking uncalled for. It's right when everything gets nice and shit, and then don't want to do anything. Well, now that we're on the other end of it, I am so excited to share this interview with you guys. But before we go any further, I got something to say. I fucked up on this. I did. I dropped the ball. I don't know how or what happened. What I've narrowed it down to is just a good old classic jinx. What I did was an hour and 17 minutes into the interview, I said that my interview would be the best interview, right? Which, like, count my chickens, right? That whole thing. Didn't learn from the nursery rhyme or wherever the count your chickens thing came from. But I counted my chickens before they hatched, and then it turned out I had, like, the 40% of the initial chickens I anticipated. 50. I had 50% of the presently accounted for chickens that didn't. Whatever. Enough of the chicken metaphor. What I'm saying is, I said that my audio quality would be the best audio quality because I got all this cool shit to work with my audio and make it good. And then it turns out, at one point or another, I set it up wrong. Imagine that. Amateur move. Some noob stuff. But it's not awful. If you guys, do you know what a spirit box is? It's like a little radio that people use to talk to ghosts. It like scans through frequencies super quick. If you pretend like you're listening to the podcast through a spirit box, it sounds great. It does. But aside from that, great content. I got to ask a lot of really good questions. CJ's really good at talking, so we had like great conversation, but the conversation is choppy and staticky. And no matter what I do to try and clean it up, it is what it is. And I just got to roll with it. Get on to the next episode, and I'm not going to be able to do that until I can kind of work with this, get past it. So bear with me. It's not until about an hour and a half that I ask the fan questions. So if any of you want to jump to that, feel free. For those of you who stick around for the whole show, I appreciate it. And without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, CJ Graham, aka Jason Voorhees. I was also wondering how, after the military, I heard that you had like a really, really strong work ethic. You were having multiple jobs at a time, stuff like that. Where did that kind of come from? How did you find that appetite?
Well, my father died when I was 3, so
Right.
he died in 1960, and my mom raised 2 boys between working and working in Social Security from the death of my father.
Wow, strong mom.
So ethically, I learned to work 2 and 3 jobs like she did. So when I got out of the military, I did the same thing. I just continued to work multiple jobs so that I could continue to grow and expand in what I wanted to do monetarily, to enjoy myself. If I wanted to get a new car, I'd buy a used car, I'd pay it off, and then I traded on another car, move up.
Okay.
So everything was more just, I learned that from my mom working to raise the 2 boys in the 60s.
Right.
I'm a great cooker of pancakes
Okay.
and peanut butter jelly sandwiches.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah.
Survival. So, with that, I just always worked multiple jobs to get to the point where I could really sustain myself on one job.
Wow. Okay. Nice. And so going back, growing up around that time period, everybody talks about the 60s and 70s and how wild they were. And I have a lot of friends who would actually say, like, I was born in the wrong time period. I should have been born back then. How do you personally feel about the way that things have, like, evolved into where they're at now?
Well, I mean, my era was probably no different. It was
Right.
just more hidden, probably. There was different flavors out there in today's social media environment. We didn't have cameras back then and
Right.
voice recording, so I'm sure there were still unethical things at that period. I was just fortunate that I was brought up a little differently. I never looked at color.
Okay.
I look at things as purple, green, or blue.
Right.
I don't care if you're from Pluto, Venus, or Mars.
Right.
There's good people and there's bad people.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. That's awesome. We've been talking a lot lately, especially at work, about the technological advancements that have been going on and how quick it's happening. I mean, and one of my coworkers specifically said, like, that I couldn't even fathom what Neuralink would be like to have that in your head, how that would process, like what it would look like to you. But if you went back 200 years with a cell phone, you might get called a witch.
You would,
get called a witch and
unequivocally, you'd
strung
be a
up.
witch and you'd be burned at the stake.
Yeah, yeah, and
Um,
it happens. The rule of technology is it doubles every year.
yeah, and my era, we didn't have all the technology. Barely, we had 110 cameras, and people would take photographs with, throwaway 35 millimeter.
Right.
I'm sure, I probably did something stupid when I was younger. You may not recall it per se, or at the time it wasn't considered stupid. It was just, hey, being normal or silly.
Yeah.
So I do understand, looking back saying, wow, I wouldn't want to be a younger person or even an older person today. Everybody wants to record because they think it's something cool. I want to be an influencer. And I understand the monetary value of that possibly. Unfortunately, it just seems that everybody's looking for somebody to, slip and fall.
Yeah.
And, butt up in the air and look how funny they look. In my day, we probably did the same thing. It just did not have a contributing factor to people looking at things through a lens, so to speak, as they do today.
Right. I love that you brought that up, actually, because that's a lot of what the movement of the Forest Bound Stories podcast is for me. Is I feel I got to this point where, like, scrolling through Facebook or even listening to some of the podcasts on Spotify, the heavy set targetry on negative news is outstanding compared to any of the positive stuff you hear about. And I work in an environment that's like pretty positive, so I always hear all these good stories, and then come home, hop on Facebook real quick, and see only bad stories. So I was like, well, surely, like, there's plenty of good things to talk about. So
I think there's an abundance of great things to talk about.
yeah.
It's unfortunate that the high popularity of negative things.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, they bring in the ratings, and at the same time, they create an overshadow or its own certain stigma.
Right.
And sometimes I think we all can be victim of that, positively and negatively. Everybody wants to be part of something, and I mean that respectfully. You have people that ride motorcycles, people that go to church, people that are in school educationally. We're doing podcasts, we're doing YouTubing, so everybody wants to be part of a specific network.
Yeah.
But sometimes I see that people are getting too in detailed in some of those networks and not stepping back. And in the old days, you used to say something very simple. Do unto others as you'd have done to you.
Right.
Real simple.
Golden rule.
Golden rule. Real simple. And slow down sometimes and smell the roses.
Right.
Now, they seem so simple, but they are. When I ran casinos and stuff, I was running billion-dollar casino resorts with give or take 2,500 employees as a chief operating officer.
Right. A lot of that was in Vegas too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I spent about 25 years in Vegas.
Okay.
I worked for Steve Wynn. I worked for Caesars. I worked for George Maloof at the Palms.
Right.
But I always used to say just three words: qualify, quantify, and simplify. Why's it got to be complicated?
Right. Don't make problems if they're not there.
So, and I really believe educationally that everybody has to understand the goal. It can't just be one person at the top. Everybody from dishwashers to valet has to understand the goal.
Yeah.
And don't forget, those dishwashers and valets, they were once us.
Right.
Me.
Right.
I remember washing dishes when I was 16, still going to high school. I also remember being in the military scrubbing those toilets, and I was really good at it, by the way.
Yeah.
But I also remember starting as a security guard in the casinos and then going into becoming a dealer. And wearing a big old pink shirt at Reno at Circus.
Oh, wow.
And then grew my career through the very top where I was running basically the billion-dollar resort.
Wow. And so what was some of the crowd like there? Was there ever any super significant guests or any big memories you remember from running some of those larger resorts?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the Palms, in Las Vegas, there's always a saying, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas. We used to say what happened at the Palms never happened.
I like it.
So, you see a lot of things, a lot of people, and anything from sports to people that are notoriety. But I had my fair share when I was in the Hollywood scene back in the 80s when I lived in North Hollywood and I ran nightclubs and stuff in that industry. I worked for a young lady named Jackie Collins, Joan Collins' sister.
Okay.
I was the general manager of a private nightclub restaurant in Beverly Hills, right there in the Beverly Center, called the Original Tramp of London. So membership was everything from Stallone to Prince to Tom Jones, etc. So I got a chance to meet those folks when I was the general manager of that private place.
That is awesome. Who do you think was one of the favorites? Like, which one stuck with you? You think?
Well, I'll always remember, Sylvester Stallone. He always went to table 5.
Okay.
I still remember 2 bottles of Cristal would come to his table. And I still remember Prince would go into the club portion. He'd sit on table 43 and drink red wine. And you kind of learn because you have maitre d's and stuff, and you have to know habits of your guest.
Of course.
But those couple big time, 1987, 1988, you kind of remember those.
Yeah. Right. Wow. Did you ever have a run-in with Motley Crue back then?
No, no. Never did, but I did go to the Rainbow and the Whiskey Go-Go back then.
Yeah.
But I never saw the folks or any of those. Now, the fortunate thing is, running casino resorts over the last 10, 12 years, I had the opportunity to meet a lot of different artists.
Right.
And that means everything from Steven Tyler to Alan Jackson to Earth, Wind and Fire, the OJs, to Debbie Reynolds.
That's great.
So I've been very fortunate with my career.
Right.
I'm very humbly appreciative that I got to meet these people and, have them give me things. I would have them autograph guitars for me or microphones, for my personal collection.
Right. Do you have a prize memorabilia? Like one that sits at the top?
I don't know about a prize memorabilia, but I'm really proud of that hockey mask that's on the wall from the opening scene, which is the James Bond scene,
Yeah.
Friday the 13th, Part 6.
Yeah.
It's in a shadow box, and of course, it is kind of my prize. I enjoy it because I didn't realize 3 decades later that we'd be having this conversation, that, over 30 years, we'd have fans that are 2 years old to 70, 75 years old,
Yeah.
and everything in between. So it's a multi-generational iconic image that I had no idea in 1986 would exist today.
I bet that's got to be surprising. And so when you got out of the military, what was the first couple things you got into then, as far as like working your way towards owning nightclubs and stuff like that, or running nightclubs and stuff like that?
Right. Well, my first thing was I went into South Lake Tahoe security, and then became a dealer at Sahara up at Lake Tahoe. And then from there, I went down to Reno dealing, learned multiple games, and then I decided I was going to take a shot and head to LA. And I had aspirations at the time. I was considering the Sheriff's Department or LAPD. So that was my main intent going down there. I just kind of developed into running clubs and, got very fortunate, very lucky with the movie industry and doing stunts. And I never looked back. So I did the Friday the 13th Part 6, of course, and I got the opportunity to do multiple national commercials, like Gatorade, AT&T, Colgate,
Oh wow. Okay.
Miller Beer. And I did a movie called Highway to Hell, which I played Hell Cop in.
Yes. I'm familiar.
Do you by chance know who Ben Stiller is?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Ben was in it for about 6 seconds, maybe 8.
Okay.
And his mom and dad were in it, of course, and also his sister. But it's interesting because I look back on it now, and Ben was just cooking some eggs on the sidewalk in this movie. And then you look at him today, and good for him.
Right,
What he's
right.
done and succeeded. Not to mention his wonderful mother and father who passed away since then.
Right.
But it's nice just to see, go back, say, wow, I did some crazy things and had some fun.
Yeah. Wow. And what a development too.
Yeah, the nice thing about when you take a look at Highway to Hell, Chad Lowe, who's Rob Lowe's younger brother, was in it. A young lady named Christy Swanson from the original Buffy and the Vampire was in it. Lita Ford,
My
rock and
dad
roll
told me
singer.
that one.
Yeah. So it had quite a few characteristics in it that were like Patrick Bergin was the devil. He played opposite Julia Roberts in Sleeping with the Enemy. You may recall he was the husband.
Right.
So it's interesting that I got a chance to meet these folks and do these different crazy events and then be part of a historical value when it comes to Friday the 13th.
Yeah, I definitely feel like there's no way that slasher films, specifically Friday the 13th, are going anywhere. There's such a heavy. There's not much of a word for it aside from appreciation, I guess, and it's this sort of tacit appreciation, especially amongst like my generation, where we all just love them. We just fucking love them. They're great. Like,
I think one thing about the slasher movies, and I look at them as Freddy, Michael Myers,
Right.
Jason, of course,
Yeah.
Leatherface.
agreed.
They're very much like the universal horror figures of the 50s and 60s with Frankenstein, the Mummy,
Yeah.
Werewolf,
Yeah.
Dracula. Fortunately, we've been able to stand the time with those 4 films, and there are a lot of others that have come out since and done very, very well. and they've remained very strong to this point. I guess test of longevity will be will they still be around in 10 or 15 years
Right.
as like a Friday the 13th. The interesting thing about Friday the 13th, and I use the analysis of India, which has about 1.3 or 1.4 billion
Yeah.
folks. If you go over there and show them a picture of Tom Cruise, every single person will tell you it's Tom Cruise.
Right.
You don't even have to Tom Cruise. You show them a picture of C.J. Graham, they'll shrug their shoulders, roll their eyes. But if you flip it over and it's a picture of Jason Voorhees with a hockey mask,
Right.
they'll all say Jason.
Right.
So you may not be of the Tom Cruise caliber, and I understand that very humbly, but I will tell you the iconic image of that hockey mask and being one of the Jason Voorhees in the films, not only is an honor, but just as important, it's stood the test of time,
Yeah.
and it's just amazing.
Yeah. Because I could definitely recognize Tom Cruise on sight, but I couldn't tell you anything he's played. If I'm being honest. I don't know any of his
Curious, huh?
names. You know what I mean?
It's curious,
Yeah.
huh?
Yeah.
But I'm very appreciative just for the following. I really had a good time in the Hollywood market doing stunts and everything. And a lot of people ask me about the stunts. I was set on fire, 20 feet underwater, breathing off regulators.
That was the big one I was wondering, was that lake scene. Well, the swimming pool scene, but
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the interesting thing is, I'd never done a stunt in my life until I did those.
Oh.
Everybody just assumed I was a stunt certified,
You just
trained.
trial by literal fire. Then.
It was really tribal fire. I had a stunt coordinator that kept me alive, and I was reasonably young, mid-20s, not out of the military too long, a little cocky.
Yeah, okay.
So at the time, when they said we're going to set you on fire, I was like, cool, I can do that. Plus, they were paying you to do it. I said, oh, this is
I would
better.
like to get set on fire.
Yeah, it's better. But the water scene that you inquired about is, most people don't know this, there's 4 different bodies of water used for the film.
Oh.
One of them was a stagnant lake in Covington, Georgia.
Okay.
And that's one of the scenes. There's another scene that me being set on fire is about a 4-foot, 6, maybe 5-foot pool.
Okay.
Full-size pool. And then, of course, the 20-foot diving, where I'm underwater all the way.
Yeah.
And then the scene where the propeller from the boat hits my mask.
Yeah.
That was actually shot in Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director's mom and dad's backyard in the pool in LA. And he had to clean the pool afterwards because of all the blood and guts. Yeah. So 4 different bodies of water to shoot that scene.
How much of that scene were you actually the thing getting hit by propellers?
Well, up to the point of being hit by the propeller, everything was me. At that point, of course, thank goodness they put a dummy down there with the mask on, let it get ripped. Everything I did in my stunts was me. They would chain me down about 20 feet. It's an Olympic diving pool, it's called. And it was a real chain, and I was just standing on a center block down there, and safety divers would swim in to give me oxygen when I would signal. And they'd pull my mask up because it's pitch black. We're in the middle of shooting at night. Black tarp all the way around the outside to darken the underwater scene. So I couldn't see anything. I could feel the other actor and the stuntman to fight, but I couldn't see anything. So when I signaled for air, which is basically a hit of the fist to your left side of your chest, they would swim in automatically. Now, they're not too far away. They're within several feet because they're monitoring. They're just out of camera frame enough where they can't be seen. I'm sure in some cases they get in too close and would back off. But once you get down to the editing process, your product is clean.
Wow, that's crazy. I was wondering how much of that was
It's all me.
The underwater.
Yeah, all my stunts, everything you see is me.
That is anxiety ridden. So what was he hitting you with in the woods? When you folding the chair?
Well, that actually is people sometimes ask what is my favorite kill. My favorite kill is the sheriff.
It is that one?
No pun intended to the police or anything. It's just the sheriff. It's just an exotic kill. There's no blood, no guts. It's just bending him in half and snapping his back.
And so that scene got a lot of scrutiny, didn't it, from editing before it got put out?
Well, a lot of the scenes did actually. They had to cut out a lot of the blood and guts back in those days to keep it out of an X rating, just to get to R. All the stuff that was cut out in those days, you could put into a film today and not blink an eye.
I was going to say, look at the TV shows.
Right. And unfortunately, though, back in those days, they did everything was not digitalized. It was film. So when they cut and paste, and of course, they threw away everything on the floor, so to speak. No. So there isn't even an opportunity to go back and do a director's cut at this point.
Wow. What is there any scene in particular that is like a long lost one that you wish could have got in there? Or?
Well, the one at the very beginning when I pull Rorschach's heart out,
Yeah.
and he's
Yeah,
passed away
good one.
since. The heart was actually still beating, which it is in the scene, but the blood was pumping out of the main artery.
Oh, so what kind of heart was that? Like a pig heart?
No,
Or
well, they had made one,
okay,
a human
okay.
heart, and put tubes and stuff in it. So when it was beating, thumping, the blood was squirting. A
Right.
little bit too risky for the 1986. Same thing with the sheriff or the deputy's head popping. The brains popped pretty good. Same thing with twisting the girl's head off. It's not
Yeah,
quite as good
right.
as it was because there was a little more connectivity when the head was pulling apart from the body.
Okay.
So some of those things got cut out.
Right, right. There was, so it's actually the only scene in that movie that it isn't you, the paintball scene in the
That's
woods.
correct. The paintball scene, there was a gentleman, it was up to myself and another gentleman for the original part.
Right.
And it was up to Frank Mancuso Jr. And they decided because I'd never done a stunt, they were going to go with a true full-blown stunt man.
Okay.
The great thing for me and unfortunate thing for him is that the first scene that they did with him was the paintball scene. And when the dailies came back, which means it comes back another day and they get a chance to see it on screen with just the editing, not editing, it just, the character wasn't coming across as Tom McLaughlin wanted.
Okay.
So the phone call went out to me, who had already kind of, it was fun to get interviewed for it, so to speak. And they said, can you do the part still? I go, yeah. And 3, 4 days later, I was in Covington, Georgia. Now that one part had already been shot, so it's pretty technical to shoot all that.
Might as well keep.
Most people just see the paintball scene. They assume that I'm wearing padding because it is paintballs.
Right.
The difference between me and him was he's a little thicker than I am, but they kept the scene. Don't feel bad for the gentleman. He's went on to have a great
Right.
career. He's been a great stunt coordinator, stunt man through producer, director, etc. But for me, it was a blessing for that one scene, unfortunately, not to meet expectations so that I could come in and pick up the ball and, run for a touchdown.
Right. So where's the meat between the proverbial bones that got you from clubs to acting career?
It was just, sometimes things happen by fate, sometimes by luck.
Right.
This was luck. I was running a club, 15,000 square foot club in Los Angeles, and Thursday evenings I had a hypnotist on stage, and he would put subjects up there and they'd go under, and it was a great show. And then one week he decided he wanted to bring us a production company to shoot his show because he wanted to put a tape together so he could look for other opportunities, possibly Las Vegas.
Right.
It just happens the folks that came in were from Real Effects, REEL Effects. Production company. Well, it just happens Real Effects did all the special effects on Friday the 13th Part 4 with Ted White.
Okay.
So they said to Jack, hey, why don't we put him and do a Jason scene with the subjects? We put a screen up, he can break through it. We'll put CJ's big ass in the wardrobe because he's big like Ted White.
Right.
And sincerely, the rest is history. I came through the screen and the production company looked at each other and said, man, we're going to cast you for Jason. It was just a natural walk, stance, positioning, and I giggled, yeah, right. But lo and behold, here we are, over 30 years later talking about it.
80, 86.
Yeah.
That's the other thing that surprised me about Friday the 13th specifically is, and I didn't go look at Nightmare on Elm Street's release dates, but Friday the 13th, the first one was released in 1980. The
Yes.
sixth one was released in 1986. I mean, it was like a really, really quick series.
Right. The iron was hot, and they
Yeah.
went from the first one, which Ari, who was a young man, about 13 years old, played Jason. He was actually in it for maybe 10 seconds at the end.
Right.
Coming over the boat, bringing Adrian King into the water, and then it just continued. Warrington Gillette and Steve Dash did part 2, one stunt, one actor. And then they decided we needed to have a full-blown stuntman after that. So Richard Brooker did number 3, which was 3D, which was very popular. And then went right into part 4 with Ted White. Part 5 didn't stand real well with the public, so to speak, and the fans. So part 6 was extremely important as a launching platform to ensure that the series kicked off. And I was real fortunate,
Defibrillator of sorts.
Yeah, part 6 to me, I mean, I'm very fortunate. There's no nudity in part 6.
Yeah, I noticed that.
There's a couple swear words, but for the most part, I always tell people, who gets to have an opening scene with James Bond look?
Right.
Who
Right.
gets to come back to life like Frankenstein? Who gets to have a rock and roll Hall of Famer Alice Cooper do the music? And
I love that sound.
how many Jasons get to wear a Batman utility belt?
Right.
So
Yeah, I love the belt
yeah, it gives me a very unique,
edge.
specific from part 6
Yeah,
through the series as it's been. So I'm very fortunate.
that's fantastic. I actually just rewatched it the other day. Um, I forgot how much I loved it. It's just so good. I grew up. I was probably like 7 when my dad was like, "All right, like, you're old enough to choose if you want to watch it now." And the first one I saw was Nightmare on Elm Street,
Right.
the first one with Johnny Depp, his first role, and it didn't spook me like I thought it would. So then we moved on, and it probably wasn't until like Child's Play, People Under the Stairs, Poltergeist, the spooky stuff, that stuff. I can't do it, and now my body has some sort of defense mechanism. I call it cinematic narcolepsy. If I start a horror movie at any given moment within the first 20 minutes, I could be awake as I am right now, fully caffeined up, I'm out. Just snoozing, snoring completely. I don't know why, but there's something about old slasher flicks like the Jason movies, the Michael Myers movies kind of put me to bed too, um, or Freddy movies that I can just sit up and watch them all the way through. Like, and not a lot of horror movies have that, you know.
Yeah, I think the interesting point of the Jason series um, is that the character just keeps going. It's one of those things where, Michael Myers. I always, we always have this going back and forth between me and the other Jasons, or Michael Myers. I know the gentleman that played Leatherface, and we have fun with each other at the conventions, just razzing each other.
Right.
But at the end of the day, the Jason character has really worldwide iconically that hockey mask.
It's everywhere.
It's it.
Yeah.
And anybody who's put a hockey mask on, anybody, it doesn't matter if you're tall, medium, short, wide, build, what doesn't matter. As soon as you put that mask on, you go into character.
Right.
And as soon as you put the mask on, it's like being Superman.
Yeah.
And it's kind of unique because most people, they go into character, they don't talk, they just stand, they don't move a lot, and they pick up, they resonate that from the movie.
Right. And so you did the Friday the 13th movies, and then what was the immediate next? Like right after the movie, what were the feelings going on? Did you have a plan?
Well, it didn't click on me, to be quite honest. I mean,
Right.
they gave me what's called a Screen Actors Guild union card, and I had no idea what that meant,
Okay.
because it was Taft-Hartley to get that, and again, I didn't know what that meant. People would cut off their finger to get one of those cards, and
Right.
I didn't realize that. So after that, I went over, I took over, and was working down at a place called Chippendales in Culver City.
Right.
So I stayed there in '87, and then '88 I took over the original Tramp of London for Jackie.
Right.
And I did meet a manager there who asked me, "Oh, you did Friday the 13th? Not a big deal, because you have to remember the best movie in 1986 was Top Gun.
Oh.
So
Okay.
there was no consideration for the horror back then and what it's become today. So working for Jackie, somebody asked me, you have a union card? I go, yeah. Well, why don't you go on calls for commercials or they're acting? I go, I never thought about it, to be quite honest. It wasn't in my vision
Right.
to come to Los Angeles and do it. So he went ahead and picked me up, and then another company picked me up for commercials. And that's when I got the next film and the multiple commercials I did after that.
What was your favorite commercial?
My favorite one was the Miller Beer. There's a scene where I actually go through and, I'll send it over to you if you'd like a copy
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah. That'd be awesome.
It is a 30-second, and it's me with a sleeveless black shirt, bending over in a ice room full of ice and pick up a
Oh,
keg
wow.
of beer that's made out of ice.
Oh wow.
And I pull it over my head and throw it at the wall and break it, and then grab Miller draft beer out of it.
That's awesome.
So I always thought that was a cool one. But I did do a Miller with me and a bunch of guys coming through the tunnel as a football player, full padded up.
Right.
I liked the Colgate commercial. It was me and a few guys in a locker room and just a baby, which was kind of cute.
You get to
Gatorade was,
do the
just
smile.
Gatorade. AT&T was just AT&T,
Right. How long ago was the AT&T one?
Back in 88, 89, 90, 91.
Wow. I guess I didn't realize how long TNT's been around.
Yeah.
Wow. That's nuts. And then so, how long were you in LA then? How long did you live down in California?
I stayed there till almost 91 or 92.
Okay.
And, realization was I'm 6'3", 250. Most people that are actors and actresses of any level are 5'8".
Oh, they're all short.
Tom Cruise, I mean, Sylvester Stallone is barely 5'11 and a
I
half.
didn't realize that they were so
Arnold Schwarzenegger is barely 6'2", 230 pounds when he won the Mr. Universe.
short. Wow.
So I'm 6'3", 250. Similar size to Lou Ferrigno, who's 260.
Right.
So with that realization to me was like, I'm too big. Nobody wants to stand next to me. There's, where today you got The Rock, and a couple
Right.
others that are of my size, but back then,
It wasn't.
nobody who's 5'8" wants a monster like me standing next to them and taking up screen space.
Okay.
And I figured that out, just common sense. And I said, I've been a dealer. I'm going to head over to Vegas, which is 5 hours away, and start work. And I did. I started over there and went from a supervisor to a pit boss, casino manager, vice president, all the way up to a general manager and a chief operating officer.
Wow. Okay. And so there wasn't much of a like fan base takeoff kind of Comic Con situation that started
No,
right after.
I did a Comic Con, San Diego Comic Con back in the 90s,
Okay.
when they put the box set out of six.
Right.
Um, and from then on, I did a con now and then. They were just starting back in those days, where today they're every week somewhere.
Right.
But it wasn't my intent. The gaming industry, I knew I could make a living. I knew I could retire from it.
Yeah.
So when I grew into the ranks, I just kept working until, at one point in my life, I said, I've done okay. I can retire. And then lo and behold, 4 years ago, I retire, and I'm getting multiple calls to go do conventions, go to Germany, go to England, go
Wow.
to Sweden, go, Jersey, Florida. And I just started doing a few conventions here and there for fun.
Right.
And then today, it's the same thing. I have to turn some down. I am retired, but I enjoy it. I've done a couple films since then. We did Vengeance.
Which I'm super excited to watch. I didn't
Yeah,
realize I could access it on YouTube until today.
right. And so Vengeance, I played Jason Voorhees' father, Elias.
Right.
And I grew a beard for 3 months and put a long stringy wig on. And
So it was a wig. I was wondering.
yeah, the wig was long and
There was
stringy.
no moment where I saw you in
Yeah,
hair that was actually long enough
yeah,
for
the
that.
beard's me.
Okay.
That's why
Okay.
I'm growing a beard right now. I've
Yeah.
got 2 more months to get it there. And then after that, before the pandemic hit, I did 13 Fanboy, which
Okay.
was shot. It's a Deborah Voorhees film. Dee Wallace
Oh.
is the lead. Corey Feldman's in it. Kane Hodder is in it. Laura Park Lincoln. It's done. It's on the shelf, ready for distribution. I think they just have to decide how to distribute it.
Okay.
The distribution now is completely different. Do they
It's
stream
insane.
it? And then, of course, the pandemic put everything on hold. So I know it's on the shelf, ready to go. It just depends on when
When to go.
Deborah wants to let it go and how she makes that distribution. Originally, it was going to be a film for theaters, but it may go to a DVD. It may go to Netflix. We'll
Okay.
see.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed. It seems like as soon as a movie's about to come out, you hear all of the streaming services come
Right.
out of the woodworking with their wallets ready.
Right. And so now I've been asked to come back and do Vengeance 2, which is Bloodlines.
Okay.
And, I've got a chance to look at the script, and I would say a good conservatively 30-35% of the film is Elias Voorhees
Oh wow.
and the blood, the DNA to what Jason was. So the characters was so strong in part one that they decided they really need to increase the awareness of the Elias Voorhees for the fans because everybody wants to know about it.
Right. Right. It adds to the lore of it all.
Right.
You know, what's it like to be on the other end of a Jason then?
The nice thing
That's
is,
the one.
the nice thing is Jason Brooks plays Jason, and we're very similar in size capacity. So there's some scenes where him and I square off like a father and a son,
Right.
and of course the son never listens to me, the father.
Right. Right.
I've had that experience with my son. So it is kind of neat because we kind of square off as a father and son, but it gives you a background in the DNA of how Jason became who he is through his
Right.
father.
That is sweet. I'm really excited to see it. How long till the second one you think? I mean,
Well,
it's
my
not shot
shooting
yet,
is in
so.
June. I've
Okay.
got a period to get it done, so I'm going to assume they'll be done by July, and then of course it's just a matter of editing and bring it down. So
Right.
if I was to make an assumption, I'd say fall. It'll be out for a distribution.
For Halloween.
Yeah, and it is part two, and I think you're probably right when you say Halloween. That's probably the best time.
Yeah.
2 years ago, what they did to distribution was on September 13th, which happened to be a Friday the 13th.
That is so exciting.
Now, again, I don't know their schedule. I haven't asked them, but there is a Friday the 13th this year, which is August 13th. It's the only one in 2021.
So there's some
Maybe they're chasing that date. Nobody's
Right.
actually said it to me. I don't make assumptions. My job is just to come in and kill a few people and,
Right.
go
Right.
to work, go home.
How is that, by the way? I saw in one of your interviews you talking about how nice it was to not the Cinderella role, not having to really say anything. You just kind of put on the mask and go. what was that like? How did you approach getting into character? I guess is what I'm asking, without any sort of like lines to inflict emotion from the character. How did you do it so well?
Well, that's the interesting part. I was very fortunate. It was such a natural.
Right.
Most people assume, well, you don't say anything. How hard can it be? I challenge anybody to put a hockey mask on
It's not easy.
and to screen the eyes so you can only see partially, and then I
Right.
want you to show emotion, anger, power, curiosity,
Right.
without saying anything. Without saying anything.
Or
And
grunting
you'll be
even,
surprised how
you
many
know?
people go, that's not easy.
Yeah.
One thing you'll find that sometimes you'll see actors and actresses on screen that are just amazing as characters.
Right.
But you put them into an interview process with questionnaires like just us having a generic
Right.
conversation, they freeze a little bit. You
Johnny
know,
Depp is one of the worst.
they freeze a little bit. But they're great on stage. They're great up in a
Yeah.
presentation on camera. But when they're just having a generic conversation about, IHOP,
They're just a normal anxious person.
sometimes they're not comfortable. I found myself to be very comfortable speaking because of running casino resorts. When
Okay.
you're up in front of 1,000 people talking to your team members and different things with
Kind of fixes
high rollers and
public
stuff,
anxiety.
or you're meeting with the mayor, or people within the city, you learn how to speak and you learn how to listen at the
Yeah.
same time.
That's fantastic. That's awesome. Where was? So I actually want to rewind back to the Chippendales thing.
Mhm.
So the only, being the age I am, 24, the only Chippendales that most of my generation knows about is the Chris Farley Saturday Night Live skit
Spinoff.
with right.
Goofball.
But that was the what was it like to be working at a Chippendales? What were you doing at a Chippendales?
Well, Chippendales at that time was in Culver City, owned by Steve Banerjee.
Okay.
And,
Is there only one?
pardon me?
Is there only one? There's only one.
There was
Chippendales?
one in LA, which Culver City actually, and then there
Okay.
was one in New York
Ah.
after that, which opened after, which is still part of the network. And then there was a road show. The crew that went out on the road, just going city to city. I worked at the Culver City store. It was kind of nice. It was fun. I still have my cuffs and collars.
So you were dancing.
I did
Right?
my thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, that. Yeah, I did that. A young man, friend of mine, who back then, he was a sheriff officer and he got hurt on duty. He was also a Chippendale dancer. His name was Darren McVie.
Okay.
And, we did the one scene where two guys come out and fight over one girl.
Oh wow. Okay.
But it was right there. The thing is, we got in trouble at Chippendales a lot by the fire marshal because it was always over capacity.
Wow.
So bad that in 1998, they closed the Chippendale as a result of too many problems with the fire department being closed.
Oh.
And then it went on from there where Steve Banerjee ran into some legal problems. But the thing is, going back those days, you didn't have all these video cameras and everything.
Right.
I mean, we had these, 35 millimeter roll-up films and stuff. So I still have a few films and this and that. And
Right.
I do have some nice 8x10 colors when we did some photo ops for Cuffs and Collars, it was called. And it was fun. I mean,
Yeah.
most people go, okay, so you stripped for a
It
living.
was
Well,
Magic Mike.
it was one of my jobs at the time because I was always working a couple jobs.
Right. That's crazy. So what were you doing whilst you were also a Chippendale dancer?
What I would do is I was doing the acting thing.
Right.
So I was going out there doing calls, and lo and behold, I'd go out and do a call and not think anything of it. And a few days later, I get a call to come back. And when you do a national commercial, you don't realize the financial impact of a national commercial.
yeah.
There's
Oh,
regional,
yeah.
but national. And when they called me, I'll give you an example. When I got my first residual check from my first commercial, which Colgate, I had no idea. I mean, here comes this monster check. And I'm like calling my agent saying, Cunningham is the agency. Can I cash this? This is a lot of money. I had no idea about residuals. Even when I got my first residual check from Friday the 13th,
Right.
I thought it was a mistake.
Oh.
I was like, wow, okay. I had to call and ask, can I cash this? I didn't understand that they rewarded you.
Right.
And even today, you still get some residuals from those debuts back in the 80s. And
Wow.
it's shocking. You go, wow, thanks.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me. But, I enjoyed it, everything. I got a chance to do some different things in my career. It's no different than being in the military 47 years ago. I mean, I'll always respect soldiers,
Right.
They do a great job of what they do. I always look at anything I can do that's soldier related for any post, military, whatever, I do it. in a couple of months, I'll be doing a show down at like a comic book horror store down in Georgia, right outside Fort Benning.
Okay.
So I made an arrangement with Chad, the owner, that will do the signing autograph. However, anybody that comes in with their military ID, dependent ID, or a vet, will do selfies for free.
Nice.
All
That is
right.
awesome.
So, and he agreed. He's ex-military also. So
Okay.
for us to try to get back to those that are giving everything to us, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing.
Yep.
That's fantastic. Your public appearance as compared to some of the other Jasons has been a lot more vibrant, I've noticed. Like, I don't find a lot of most of the Jasons out there.
Yeah, Ruby, my wife,
Right.
she really handles the social side of it. She sits me down and says, okay, you got to do a podcast. Okay. She loves doing things with the social media for me.
Okay.
And to be fair, you've got to have somebody assisting you. You can't do everything yourself.
I'm finding that out.
Right. Part of being a good leader is having good people around you.
Right. You're as good as your worst crewmate.
True.
Yeah.
When you got a weak link, you got a problem somewhere down the pike. So, with that, she's always, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? And it's not that we can or can't. It's just, do we want to be too much, or do we want to keep everything out there face value wise?
Right.
So I've been very fortunate. I get a lot of opportunities with podcast, and I do a lot of Skype, and I do a lot of Zoom.
Right.
For different people. I think it's wonderful to see somebody out there hustling like yourself, doing a function, making money, trying to get into where your population of listeners is tremendous, and there's reward on the other side of the rainbow. So if I can come do something and contribute to someone's success, that's great, because I've been fortunate. So, I'm appreciative about it. And like I said earlier, the reason I got the part was luck.
Right.
Sometimes the luck pays off. Once you have luck and you get a chance to do, you better deliver, though.
Yeah, that's been I've been graced with my grandfather's luck, I always say, which he burnt himself out on it, but I'm a very humble kid, and I always kind of have been. I've also been extremely lucky, so sometimes, especially with how much my generation likes to trauma bond,
Right.
they get around each other and talk about these shitty developments they've been through and all this stuff that they've had to deal with, and I'm taking vacations to Hawaii at
Yeah, I
15.
I'm very appreciative, and I do, again, try to play it forward, as it said.
Right.
And if there's something I can do at this stage where I can assist somebody doing the fan film that I'm doing, I'm not taking any money. The last one I didn't take any money. They took what they would have paid me, and the last one dedicated it to the burn victims up in Seattle.
Oh, wow.
Shriners Children Hospital. This one, they're doing a vet donation for me because I choose not to take any money. And
That is so sweet.
one of the producers, Sean, is in contact with a vet association, and I believe it's for combat vets or disabled. And so I just said, that's fine. Just, migrate what you would pay me to them. And that's fine. I'm good with that.
Yeah. Wow. And that's how, what's the saying? You never work a day in your life if you love what you do.
Right. And again, if I can humbly help somebody else get, a good career in what they want to do, if you don't try, you're never going to succeed.
Yeah.
And like earlier, you asked me about working multiple jobs. You have a passion for a job, great. But you also have a job that you need money to pay for.
Yeah.
So you have to choose between passion and taking care of your family.
Right.
So sometimes you end up doing multiple jobs. And if the passion takes off for a reward financially, it's wonderful. However, you got your backup plan. You always got to have a backup plan. You never take an LZ. Never take an LZ without a backup plan.
Yep.
All right. So just, this is my straightforward, but here's my backup plan.
Right. That I was blessed with specifically my grandparents. They're very, very work driven.
Right.
Which is also caused tension too before. But with that work ethic, like I don't have any very older mindsets, except for the fact that for some reason deep down programmed inside me, I would way prefer Ariel to stay at home and me work, because then I know she's safe. I know that my kids are safe, and I don't have to pay for daycare that way. And I love being the provider. I just do. I'll put out any extra amount of work that I have to get stuff done, and that drive has just never gone away. So I went to college right after high school, busted through that in 3 years, got my degree in environmental science and studies, with no concept that I could work with cannabis in today's day and age. I wanted to work with Yellowstone National Park until I found out the way the contracts work. And I was like, actually, I like spending time with my kids more. So I
Yeah,
failed,
once you learn, I mean, everything looks great on the face of it,
doesn't it?
but once you understand the operations of some things, you may back up. It's unfortunate that a lot of young folks going through the school system right now don't understand that if you want to invest 50,000 or whatever into your college degree, I'm good for you. Congratulations.
Right.
I never had a college degree, still don't. I'm what they call old school, where I worked through the ranks and earned it. But sometimes I don't think everybody remembers you're going to spend X in your career to get your degree, but the career is only going to pay you Z.
Right.
And sometimes people don't realize
A lot of the
you're going
time
to
it doesn't
invest
make up
50
for
to
it.
make 50,
Yep.
but you're going to pay back that 50 for 10 years. So now you're only making 35.
Which is what I make now.
And people
You
don't
know?
realize the mathematical equation, which to me is very simple.
Yeah.
2 plus 2 is still 4.
Right.
But I don't think people really are taught educationally to say, hey, I'm going to invest X to get Z. Does that make mathematical sense?
Right.
And as you can tell, running casinos, to me, everything is a statistic.
Which is nice.
Always looking at a number. How many children would you like to have? And my question is, how many can you afford? It's real simple math. How many cars do you want? How many can you afford? So I look at things a little more different. Again, algorithms, statistics, everything is a number to me. So
Right.
I kind of look at things through a different lens than most folks. It doesn't make it right, wrong, or indifferent. It just means I'm looking at things a little more analytical
Right.
for the real world. Again, I go back to qualify, quantify, simplify. I make it simple.
I love that.
So
I'm going to use that. Because that's a good one. I'm a very fluid-minded person. So I'm either all over the place or directly focused on one thing.
right,
And if I catch that focus, that's it. That's it. There's no sleep. There's no food. It's just that focus.
right. Well, my 3 kids, they all do something different. The 22-year-old is in the baking industry. The 25-year-old, she does eyelashes and in the cosmetic world, makeup. Okay. And the 26-year-old, he's in the cannabis. He is the general manager of a store up in Washington State.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they all have different careers. They all have their own business and or love, passion. The youngest, she's 22, and her dream is to have her own bakery.
That's a good one.
A bakery. And she's happy. So I think everybody has to have a dream and a passion, and then sometimes realistically you got to decide what makes true sense. I mean, at what point do you make that decision? I didn't really make a command decision and really step out until I was 32, 33.
Okay.
And then I committed from that point forward, which enabled me to retire when I turned 60.
Wow. And so when did you and your wife meet?
She was lucky to meet me 10, 11 years ago.
I love it. I love it.
And her eyes burning me from your right. Can you see the lens?
She seems focused on something.
She's okay. We met almost 11 years ago.
Okay.
We blended our both families. The girls were 11, 13, give or take. My son was 14 or 15.
Okay.
So we had the fortune of meeting in Northern California. I was the general manager of a billion-dollar casino resort right off 80 in Northern California for about 4 years.
Right. So when you have a position like that at a resort, how many hours of the day are you there, or is there like a living situation that they put you in?
No, you're working 24/7.
Oh yeah, okay. That's kind of what
we
I
didn't
figured.
celebrate Christmas and birthdays on the normal day. It was whenever we could work them into my schedule.
Right.
I go to work like anybody else in the morning, but that doesn't mean, and I try to leave at 6 or 7 at night. If it's a concert night or a weekend, maybe 8 or 9.
Right.
Turn over to one of my vice presidents or the assistant general manager to handle it. But that doesn't mean you won't get a phone call at 1, 2, 4 in the morning. Good things happen, bad things. It could be as simple as, unfortunately, a guest fell and got hurt. I want to be notified. It could be a guest lost $1 million. I like to be notified, or they won $1 million. Somebody wants more credit. They want another $250,000, and they have to have authorization from me. So the job goes 24/7. Vacations, you're still checking your phone in the morning. You put it in the safe while you're in a hotel, and then you check it a couple times throughout the day. So it is part of the requirements of that magnitude of a job, but you know it when you take the job. With that comes a paycheck, and with that becomes responsibilities.
Right.
So the most important thing is, again, I always thought I was pretty good at what I did, but I always made sure I had great people around me.
Right. And so there's a thing I've been going over myself, learning the gap between confident and egotistical. You know, knowing that you are going to be good at something, that you have a good chance of doing it, and then the just bragging about the ability that you have to do it. What do you think about that? Like, where do you see the line between ego to confidence?
Well, there's dictatorship.
Right.
Anybody can be a dick.
Right.
That's not leadership. And there's leadership. Now, one thing I learned back in the 80s from the hypnotist that worked at the club is something called a hypnosis term called suggestive thought. He was giving the subject on the stage suggestive thoughts.
Right.
Well, think about what that is. That's a suggestive thought of me giving you an idea,
Yeah.
maybe two ideas, and letting you decide which one you want to do. Now, the answer is neither one of them are wrong. So I'm giving you a suggestive thought of doing A or B, but you know what? You make the decision, let me know what you decide. That's leadership.
Okay.
Because when you make that decision, you take ownership of it.
So it becomes dictatorship rather than leadership.
Very simple. Qualify, quantify, simplify. Now, sometimes there is no right and or you may have the best answer. And you know what? It's just a solution of saying, makes sense, let's do it. I used to tell my vice presidents, very simple, okay, I like it, let's do it. If it works, it's your idea. If it fails, it was my idea.
I actually do that a lot.
And that's what I looked at it. If it didn't work and I endorsed the idea, I always took full responsibility. The buck stopped here. But I made sure that when it was successful, that the people in charge, the vice president of the hotel, vice president of gaming, got full credit for a great idea, great concept, and well done.
That's sweet.
So that's kind of how I look at leadership format.
Right. Right.
You know, everybody has an opinion, like a butt. And it's really easy. I always tell people it's easy to be an armchair quarterback. Remember that. It's easy to say what you should have done when you weren't there in battle. And a lot of people that are leaders don't understand that, and they just tell you, well, you should have done this and you should have done that. Well, you got to think about it. You didn't have to make a split decision on what we're doing at the casino. So I always used to tell people, you know what, the important thing is you made a decision. Good job. Now let's figure out how we can fix or correct or do better.
Wow.
And like I said, it's not brain surgery. It's common sense.
Right.
I had good people working for me with MBAs, bachelors, and different degrees. But I always tell people I had a PhD in common sense.
Which is probably the best one to get.
Which I think it pays dividends because your common sense, listen to people around you.
Yeah.
Common sense, figure out what's the best road, best path, and then let's get there. It doesn't matter whose decision it is, as long as we get to the path, complete the mission. No different than being in the military. You got a mission. You got to get it done.
I think listening was the one that did it for me the most. Being an introvert definitely helped me be an extrovert substantially.
Right.
I sat around and got to listen to people talk for so long. You could realize inflections in people's voice that would set other people to be uncomfortable or comfortable. And then I think that's why I actually prosper in retail so well. It's funny because I went from kitchens to retail, and I work in a smoke shop, so retail is a pretty hazy term. No.
We call it the hospitality industry.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So most of the customers I deal with are already in a good mood by the time they get there. They're coming in to grab usually pretty happy thought things.
Right.
But when I worked service industry, like kitchens and stuff, I wasn't actually allowed to see or talk to the customers after my first couple encounters with them because I found out I'm a mirror. I'm like a very empathetic person. So if I come up on someone who's being very hostile, I'm way better at it than I ever was, but I mean, I just come right back at them. And when you're in the service industry, the customer's always right. I'm luckily in an industry now where that's just not true. So, we get to steer people in the right direction and stuff like that. But
well, from your perspective, you're educating people. Not everybody's as educated in the industry you're in.
Right.
I would say that when you're talking to people, the customer is right to a point, but you have to make the customer always feel like they're right, even though you have to use that suggestive thought to migrate them in a different direction.
To get them to see the actual truth.
All right.
Or
So, I mean, everything is, again, communication skill.
Right.
And trying to remember, don't take it personal. Sometimes I'm frustrated and I call a service rep on the phone with something. First thing I say is, okay, Mary, just for the record, I'm not mad at you, but I'm frustrated at the company you work for right now. And I go into my problem, my challenge. I tell them right away, I'm not mad at them personally.
Right.
It's the company they're working for. because I'm frustrated. You're going to hear that little annoyance in my voice.
Yeah, so if you can at least get it out in the air.
Because I'm trying to figure out how this happened. Common sense says
Yeah.
A, B, C, and you went X, Y, Z. Duh.
Right. My daughter's taught me that one for sure. Was that
So,
look, I'm not mad at you. I want to know why there's
Right.
pudding all over the kitchen floor. Like simple questions. Especially, I learned I think the reason that I took off so quickly after high school was because I had a kid at the end of high school, right at the end of high school, so I didn't give a shit about anything else other than getting work done.
Right.
I didn't have a bar face, don't care to. It doesn't ever look like fun to me. It just looks like a lot of throwing up.
Yeah, the hospitality industry, I always look at when I go anywhere, even a restaurant, it's
Right.
kind of hard for me because I'm always looking at everything from light bulbs to the floor
Yeah.
to the salt and pepper, the way they're set up. And running a private nightclub restaurant of that magnitude, we're looking across tables, and everything from salt and peppers are set up exactly the same way on every table to the forks and knives. We used to take a 25-cent quarter and put it at the edge, so every one of them was majestically perfect throughout the floor. You would take a look down the floor and tell if it was ready for opening or not.
So some of the places now where you go in, it's just like, is there like an OCD factor, like a twig?
I think it's more that, in my opinion, is that they're not taught a specific way.
Right.
And then, of course, why that way is of so importance. When you're dealing cards, and I use it as an example, I can look down 25 blackjack tables straight down, and I can tell you if there's a dealer not following procedure. If they're not following procedure, there's a reason. Either they're lazy or they're in the process of stealing. Procedure's there for a reason.
Because it's pretty cut and dry.
Left, right, move, second. But if you break rhythm with your hands, with your pickup of the money, with your assembly, the way you're moving your rack around, there's a problem. And that's why procedures are so important in the casino industry.
Right.
That's why your cameras are watching everybody, and when you see hand movement that is not part of the procedural movement, then you start looking at that individual a little more.
Swipe.
And I've had players do it. I've had dealers taken off the stick, which is on craps, by a gaming agent, and had them handcuff them right there on the table in front of all the players.
Ooh.
For stealing.
Right.
What they were doing was when they were on one of the bases, they would palm a chip, put it on the rack. They had a size 11 shoe, but they were actually a size 8. They'd take their stock and drop it, and it dropped right. They were so good, it dropped right in their shoe. They put their foot back in it.
Wow.
So, and we didn't catch it, to be fair. Here's where I always give credit where I do. We didn't catch it. Cameras didn't catch it. Surveillance didn't catch it. A player said something about it. So again, here's where I don't take credit for something that wasn't mine or ours.
Right.
But this is how I always say, well, thank you for the player. Said, hey, there's something wrong with that dealer of yours, and told a pit boss, who then called surveillance, and they watched that person, and lo and behold, they were stealing $25 chips.
Wow.
So procedures mean you're doing a certain way. Looking through a restaurant, looking down the tables, I used to laugh, but theoretically, all ketchups are on the right, all mustards are on the left, and it's not. To me, it was, you knew it was set up the same way every single time and ready for a customer.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
So now, does it make it right or wrong? I don't know. It's a personal preference.
Yeah.
I like things. I'm a perfectionist when I can be, good,
Right.
bad, or indifferent.
The selection.
But if you're taught a person what you want, they know what to do. If you don't teach them, they're going to do whatever they want.
Right. Right.
So how can you really say it's their fault if they weren't? Now, if you teach them they don't follow, then, there's a problem. They just don't want to cooperate.
Yeah.
Well, you only pay me X. And I'm thinking, well, if I paid you Z, does that mean you do a better job? I'm not really sure what that means personally. I think you give it all. You take the job, you give 100%.
Yeah.
At that point, you give 100%.
Yeah. I agree with that. You give 100% long enough, you end up getting more.
It just becomes natural. You grow, you get promoted. Before you know it, you're the person in charge.
Right. I lucked out with my position now. I actually work at Discontent, the big banner on the wall right there, and I'm not leaving as long as I can stick around there. I'm sticking around there. It's a position that allows me to pursue my stuff that I want to do. Like I was able to leave a little early today to do this podcast, and then I can work on notes for the podcast at work, stuff like that. We all push each other. All of us are very artistic in our own ways. I have a coworker who paints, a coworker who does graphic design and sculpting and all over the board, and so it's an amazing environment to be just surrounded by artists all day, and all of us are pushing stuff back and forth. My crew at work is a large reason that's why the podcast even started, because we do this all day. We just sit and chat nonstop. And then finally one day, one of the customers was like, "Yeah, if I could record you guys, I would listen to it all day." And I was just like, "Oh shit."
Well, I always say it's a form of leadership. If everybody understands, like I said, qualify, quantify, simplify. Qualify, that's ideas.
Yeah.
That's shooting the breeze.
Right.
Quantify monetarily. Let's run some ROI, return on the investment. Let's run some numbers and see if it makes sense.
Right.
Simplify. Let's make sure everybody understands the mission so we can get the job done simply,
Right.
without being complicated. And at that point, everybody in your business that's working that counter knows what's going on and what the hustle is, rather than just sitting there going, well, I do my thing and you do your thing. Again, they may not be right or wrong, but if everybody's on the same page, working the same way on a POS,
Right.
you start looking at how things are being done on the system. Question is, how can you set your POS up to be more efficient, more
Right.
effective? How can you set it up so it can count not just transactions, but volume, sales? I mean, all of that is a marketing strategy when I look in your business and what I'm going to do to work in your business.
Right.
To me, we get back to number one. It's still a number.
Right. Right.
So
I wish I was better at numbers. I'm dyslexic, and it's a nightmare.
I understand that portion. I know some people in your position, and it's
Yeah.
got to be challenging. For me, it's sometimes I just sit and when I was working, I couldn't sleep because I'm thinking of what I'm going to do tomorrow. I'm running through my brain. No different than when you're going for a job interview for the first time. I don't know how you are, but I talk to myself in the car, ask myself all the questions.
Constantly. Yeah.
They may only ask me 2 out of the 15 questions I practice for,
Right.
but they'll be answered well.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Because
And I know how to take a question and throw a couple extra answers into it, to pat myself on the back because you're looking for a job. Now, once you get it, it's a beautiful thing, but you better prove yourself.
Right.
Otherwise, it'll be very short-lived.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I applied at Discontent probably like 4 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I started working there beginning of 2020, right before everything kind of went to shit. Got my job there. They kind of rescued me from another smoke shop that I was working at. I won't disclose the name of it, but they were selling meth pipes,
Mm-hmm.
and I just couldn't do it, like, at all. And so I kept trying to talk my boss out of doing it, and then he was like, find me something that makes that much money at that kind of a markup. Well, you can buy an oil burner at 10 cents a pop and then sell it at $10 a pop. Nothing makes that kind of markup. So I left because I was like, I can't be a part of this. Like,
But that's an ethical decision.
yeah,
So,
definitely.
running the casinos, the one, I had about roughly give or take $100 million payroll.
Wow.
So again, numbers are numbers, but you had to make sure, 401k was there, match was there, bonuses were there for those. Everybody was getting, I didn't do COLA, cost of living allowance. I did merit raises. Merit raise is a little different than cost of living allowance. A cost of living COLA is just, hey, I get 3% this year regardless of my performance.
Okay, so I'm guessing merit kind of runs.
Merit is based on your performance.
Right.
So you might get 5% and I might get 2%. Now, if I do get 2%, my management or managers better be able to prove on a piece of paper that you've had some coaching elements and or some written coaching along the way in the last year that would qualify, quantify, simplify why you're only getting 2% compared to John Wayne, who got 5%.
Right.
But if John Wayne is working that hard, they deserve 5%, not just the standardization of 3.
Incentivized programs for that reason, and it's not that I'm not motivated. It's just that it's like this gamer mindset. If you can get the score higher by just doing extra stuff, I'll do stuff all damn day. Like, that's fine.
Well, I know in your industry, very similar. Everything's a number. I go back to my industry. My son being a general manager, they have bonus programs for their bud people,
Yeah.
and they're based on a certain amount of sales in totality for the month, not for the day, because
So it's like a
days fluctuate.
bi-weekly commission type.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a bonus. If you exceed X, you get a little Z.
Okay.
No different than I did in the casino industry. My host had a salary, but they were expected to bring in a theoretical number from a certain amount of players every year. If they exceeded that number by building new clientele and new players, they got a bonus.
Okay.
So again, everything's a number. I mean, performance is performance. Don't misconstrue, and you should get paid for a good job done.
Right.
But if you excel, exceed, and you're one of those people working 24/7, 365, you should be rewarded for that
Right.
hard work rather than everybody being equal and getting the same amount. Some of us are high flyers, and
Right.
some of us don't want to. And I respect the ones that don't want to. I think it's, if you want to make whatever an hour, good. But if you want to make whatever an hour and you can go after it, good.
Yeah.
You know, but don't underestimate yourself. In my opinion, I'm a good example. If I can do what I did with a high school diploma, an honorable discharge from the military, which is my 4-year college degree, and a lot of hard work, anybody can do it.
I gotta ask what happened? How'd you end up discharged? I've had
Honorable
three friends
discharge.
who are
Oh
honorably
yeah, I did my
discharged.
4 years.
Was it a medical?
No,
Oh,
honorable.
you were
No,
just that was it.
no,
Okay, okay,
ETA, it's called estimated time.
okay.
My ETS, my service, estimated time of service, I joined for 4 years, 1974 to 1978.
Okay.
So that means I'm getting ETS, estimated time of service, or I re-enlist, my choice. When you re-enlist, they give you a bonus, 5, 10,000, whatever. I chose not to re-enlist because I think there were other things I wanted to do. Um, in the military, for me, I learned leadership. I was a sergeant. I was infantry.
Okay.
So with that being said, as I said earlier, a lot of the staff sergeants and sergeant first classes that were coming back from Vietnam were getting out. So I ended up being a Sergeant E5 in charge of a platoon, meaning I had about 30 soldiers below me in four squads. So I was holding down a job of an E7, and I was an E5.
Wow.
So again, leadership.
Yeah.
I learned a lot, and those folks below you are dependent on you.
Right.
You jump out of a Chinook, you want to make sure you guys are coming out there with what's abounding Overwatch is called, and that you're going to take care of business when you hit the ground. And everybody's dependent on you. You got to look at who I want to get in a foxhole with. Everybody on my platoon, I'd get in a foxhole with.
Nice.
Because you would.
Yeah.
So it's part of a leadership mentality, I think. And I think the military, all branches give you a good format, a good foundation. I think it's up to you as an individual to decide what you want to do with that foundation. How do you want to build upon that foundation? Do you want to build an emperor? Do you want to build a tower? Do you want to just climb the mountain? What do you want to do?
Right.
I chose to climb the mountain.
Wow. Wow.
So, again, I'm fortunate. I'm humbly appreciative of everything I've done and my successes, and proud of my kids. All 3 of them are working hard. I got a great wife. She keeps me out of trouble, keeps me in check. So, but I can't complain. And if I did, I'd be stupid.
Right.
So I choose not to. So I'm very fortunate. Like I said, I retired at 60, and then I started doing the shows, and I've done a couple movies now. This will be my 3rd one since I retired. And for me, it's fun. That passion, it's not a monetary thing. It's a passion
hobby,
thing for fun.
Yeah,
It's a great hobby.
recreational sport.
Yep, it's a great hobby.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were recently living in Arizona before you?
When I retired, we moved to northern Arizona, about
Right.
40 acres. We got 3 horses. We got some alpacas and some beehives.
Horses? Did your love for horses kind of come from the casino realm, or was that
No,
like
it
a
was
different?
something. Always wanted to have a ranch.
Okay.
I always knew when I would retire that I'd get a little bit of acreage so I could get some horses. Ended up getting 3 of them down there, and the alpacas and bees.
So you have bees too.
I got honeybees. And about 7, 8 months ago, the wife said, "Hey, I don't like it here. Can we move?"
Okay.
And I had to remind her, I retired, right? And so I giggled and laughed at her and said, "I'll tell you what, let's get an appraisal on our ranch, and whatever it's worth, you can buy that, and we'll spend it elsewhere." When she came up with a couple ideas, I said, "What about Montana?"
What made you think of here?
Well, I knew my mother wanted to retire in Whitefish many, many, many years ago.
Beautiful place.
I knew that my father, who was from Minnesota, used to do the rodeo circuit in the late 50s
Okay.
through Billings over to Seattle. And I also, about a year and a half ago, found out because Ruby was working on the internet through Ancestry.com that I had first cousins here.
Oh.
So lo and behold, I meet somebody that's 80 plus years old that was friends with my dad.
Which is crazy.
Never knew anything about my father. And all of a sudden, he's bringing me a shotgun that used to be my dad's, a custom-made saddle that has my dad's name on it that he's kept all these years, chaps that he had custom made that he wore. I got pictures of him wearing it in 1959.
So was your dad from here?
He was from Minnesota originally.
Okay, okay.
But he would do the rodeo circuit between Seattle and
Wind up
here.
And,
So,
wow.
for me, I was like, and when I came up here, I drove to and from east and west Montana for a week, put 2,000 miles on a little rental car. And the last ranch I looked at was up here. And, lo and behold, it was empty. It looked pretty good. Put $2-3 into it, and it meet my expectations. So we put a bid on it and bought it.
Wow, okay. Because I was wondering, out of all of Montana, I love Billings as a city, and even though we're the Denver of Montana, so we deal with a lot of the bullshit of like a big city mind with a small city structure.
Right.
But I mean, there is some gorgeous parts of Montana. However, I guess when it comes to ranching, my definition of gorgeous is just inconvenient for farming.
It is. I mean, for me, with the horses and stuff, it's just great for us. For me, when you're retired, you wake up in the morning, like this morning, you had an inch or two of snow out there, and tonight before I came in for your interview, it was all melting, the sun was out.
Yeah, that's pretty standard.
So,
I had a lady from Washington, I believe, like coastal Washington, that they're on vacation here to go see the pass, and right before it was, not this last snow last night that happened, but the one a couple days ago that was like 5 inches overnight, and then it was gone by the next day. They were going up to Red Lodge that night, and I was like, I wouldn't. It's gonna snow, like, and the way she looked at me is like, I chose the weather, and she was just her exact words were, but it's April. Yep, that's why it's snowing.
Yeah. So I think Billings itself is beautiful. Montana overall, I enjoy
Gorgeous.
all of it for me. If I could run a casino resort up here that was, big enough, I'm talking 3,000 slot machines and up to 3,000 rooms, I'd consider it. I mean, 3-4 months ago, I got a call. I wanted to come down and interview for a CEO job in southern Arizona, running 4 casino resorts, and I'm like, I might have considered when I was in northern Arizona because it's only
so much closer.
150 miles.
Right.
But, retired means retired. And when you retire, you look at the thing numerically, a spreadsheet, and you decide what you need to survive the next 25 years with a 3 to 4% increase in cost of living every year.
Yeah.
And then it's a real simple mathematical equation. I know people laugh,
And
but it is simple.
a bit, yeah.
And you got to put in there, over or under 10% for problems.
Wow.
So fortunately for me, I'm a vet. So the Veterans Administration, I do my medical through them.
Which is super helpful. My brother-in-law is also a vet.
And I just signed up with them 2 years ago. Never used them. Always knew I had it in my pocket, so to speak. Always knew that being a veteran, I could apply for it. Just never did.
Yeah.
But there is a pocket between, 60 and 65 or 66 before you get Medicare. And you have to go out and get insurance.
Right.
You don't realize that. There's one mistake I did make. I was like, doggone it, I should have thought that one out. So I was off about 3 years on that one. But knowing I could call the VA, they've been wonderful to me. I mean, I know the Veterans Administration gets kicked every once in a while, but personally, I've never had better coverage and quality of coverage, especially here in Billings.
Wow. Yeah, I've heard pretty good stuff about the way that our vets get treated around here.
Yeah.
It just about anywhere you walk into will have a veterans discount with like military ID. You're set to go. A lot of the time, you can tell. You can tell when someone's done, like served.
Right.
It's there. It's one of those things.
There's a lot. There's a lot of opportunities that veterans don't know about. As far as
like housing assistance, medical.
You can do a lot of things
like,
if you ask. I mean, but you have to ask. If you go to Home Depot, if you don't tell them you're a vet and you don't have your card, but if you do, they'll give you 10% off whatever you're buying.
Wow.
You just have to ask.
Right.
But if you say you're a vet, AutoZone, if you say you're a vet and you've got your ID, they'll give you 10% off. So there are some rewards, but it's not advertised. Right. You have to know about it.
Well, and I feel like not too many people like asking either.
I don't. That's me. I'm real. That's a problem for me to ask for anything.
Me too.
Please and thank yous are easy.
Yeah.
But could I get a discount?
Yeah. Right.
But
right.
it's interesting. You don't realize. You go over to Home Depot and you spend $300 and they give you $30. That's a half a tank of gas.
Right.
I go back to numbers,
fast too.
and I'm looking at numbers saying, I'm stupid if I don't ask for that.
Yep.
So no, I really do appreciate the not the UPS, but when you go online and you can use all the military outlets if you want to shop, you can get all your discounts. You just have to buy it, the commissary, but you have to mail it out, to go on the property. So there's a lot of opportunities that vets just don't know about. They just, again, they don't do a real good job of marketing.
Telling.
Let's go back to social media and everything you do and
Of
I
all
do.
the stuff that they
Mark.
Yep.
They gotta market it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so I noticed first episode was like 100 some views. Second episode's like I think 50 some views, and a large difference between first episode and second episode is I was so tired by the time the second episode had finally finished uploading. The first episode was shot with like this individual webcam that has an autofocus. It was a shit show. By the end of it, it's like all the audio is unsynced by the end, so we're about a sentence ahead, and yeah. And
not yours, but I've seen that. I know what you're saying.
Yeah, it's rough. But then we got that figured out using a 4K camera and all this extra stuff. And glad I looked over there in time for that. And the computer was pissed. Like YouTube and the computer's relationship started going down the drain really quick because it was like, okay, it took me 3 hours to upload a very low quality, low resolution video with not an audio interface and mics and all this extra stuff. And then I went to upload that one, and it was probably about an 8.5 hour upload process. So then it was, I think, I did a midnight premiere for it, but I had already eaten, I had smoked, I was going to bed, and then remembered, like, damn it, that's probably going to be done any minute now. So I had to get up and come in here, and at the section to tag stuff, I just didn't, because I didn't have nothing in my brain at the time. And so as much as I hate hashtags, they're important. Super, super important nowadays, too, for whatever reason. It's because of how fast the YouTube algorithm will take off with your stuff as soon as you start to actually tag a bunch of stuff in it. The second I put Friday the 13th on there, that just already spider webs the video out that much further.
Real fast.
Super, super quick. And then also just like a lot of my own marketing. I don't tell people about the show very often either. Like my coworker today, as I was leaving, he was like, dude, have fun. Like it's going to be a good time.
Well, if you go to work tomorrow, just let them know that you survived.
Yeah, right.
I survived an interview with Jason Voorhees.
I'm so excited to do my intro, which I always do right after, right after the guest leaves and stuff like that. I come back in and then get in my zone and then do my intro real quick. And I usually end up doing about 5 or 6, and then when my editing partner shows up, we go through them all, and whichever one makes them kind of like cringe the most is the one I go with. Because I just love it. I actually compared my last guest to a houseplant in like a improv tangent in a good way. I was talking about how we've added plants to the studio, and they're very bright and inviting. And then my brain went much like our guest today, and then I was like, I just fucking compared him to a houseplant. That's fine.
Yeah,
It'll
that's
be
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Well, I should have brought my machete just in case you got out of line.
Right.
Yeah, dang it.
So let's some of the questions that a few of my friends asked. I had tons and tons of just Jason questions.
Right.
But I also have watched just about anything I could find on YouTube of people asking you questions and stuff like that. So there wasn't a lot of my questions that hadn't been answered.
Well, I think, one thing when you're being interviewed, doing a convention, I have fans that'll ask me the simplest question, what's your favorite kill? Now, I've probably answered that twice, but you still want to answer like it's the first time you've ever answered it.
Right.
So there is no question that I can't appreciate it. And each market is marketable differently. You may have seen some of them, but you went out and searched for them. Not everybody searches for them. So some people are podcast followers of certain guests or certain people. So you'd be surprised how many people love to hear the same question, or they never saw an interview anyway. I'm sure some of your friends at work they've never seen an interview with CJ. For them, it's going to be the first time they ever heard the question.
I know that out of all the interviews, I should have muted my phone. I know that out of all the interviews I watched, the only thing that this is where that cocky confidence thing comes into play. Mine will probably have the best quality. As far as sound quality and video quality goes, I was like, and I didn't care about it at first until that first episode
4G
came out.
And you get up there, in sound quality.
Oh yeah, and it is a world of difference.
Even when I do Zoom or Skype, I didn't buy an elaborate microphone,
but
I didn't want to use the one on my computer. I went ahead and bought a small one that at least gives a better production sound
Yeah.
when I'm
Otherwise,
sitting.
there's a lot of I call it tin sound.
Yeah, and you sound like you're in the bathroom on the toilet.
Yep.
I
Yep.
don't sound
You
like
get
that.
a really bad echo.
Yeah,
Actually, I had to give myself a pop filter.
yeah.
You might not have needed it. You're softer spoken than I expected, to be honest. But
I am. I'm very,
I pop a lot, so
yeah,
I'm loud.
I tried it. Well, that's part of my, when you're 6'3", 250, people expect you to come in and be very forward and rough.
Right.
And by the way, what? You're like a
Right.
wrestler.
Yeah.
I'm not. I'm very quiet,
That's
very
my grandfather. That's
subdued.
my grandfather. He's like 6'3" and just a loud
Yeah,
grizzly.
I'm very subdued. I don't want to intimidate anybody. That's not my intent. That's
It'd
why
be
I'm much
easy to
more
do,
relaxed. I'm already a problem when I walk in because I'm 6'3", 250, so it's
Right.
not like you can block me.
Right.
So, eye contact, speaking is easy for me. It's not real hard dialect.
I
I
love
mean, I don't
talking.
get rough about things. And as I said, I'm very humble about everything I do, so I appreciate it. So you got some questions, fire them
I
out.
do. So these are some fan questions, and it's this one's gonna crack me up out of the stuff we just talked about. So first fan question comes from Madison W. Favorite part 6 kill, which was the
Madison, that's a simple one. I'll tell you, breaking the Sheriff's back, Madison.
Yeah.
Amazing. Had a great time doing it. Madison, you may not know this, but it took 2 people to do that. There's actually a person in a hole with their waist and legs sticking out, and then the sheriff standing in front of them right against their butt with safety pins. So it looks like one person. Sheriff then bends over, so they look like flush, and then I bend them back, and they just laid back on the other person's legs, Madison. So that's the trick to the trade.
That's fantastic. And then her follow-up question for that would be, what's your favorite kill from another Jason?
Well, I got a good friend out there, Madison, Kane Hodder, played
Yeah.
Jason in parts 7, 8, 9, 10. And Kane and I are good buddies. We talk about it. I always like to use his favorite kill. His favorite kill is the sleeping bag. And he just
Which
picks
is
up that
such
body and flings it into the tree. Same concept. All you hear is bones breaking.
Yeah.
No blood, no guts, just pure power.
What was in the sleeping bag?
Bones.
Just actual bones.
Well, there was a human that was dead, of course.
Right.
Right. I don't know because I didn't do that, but common sense tells me they probably put a skeleton in there, a fake skeleton,
Yeah.
and when it hit it. But don't forget, movie magic includes sound magic.
Right. Right. So some after effects of some celery sticks and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. Next question would be from Rich B. How uncomfortable is the mask?
Well, Rich, it's not as bad as you would think. Now, the prosthetics for Maggot Head were very uncomfortable. About a 5-hour process to get all that. But once we got past the Maggot Head scene, they cut the front of the mask or the front of the prosthetics out, so I would just put the mask on. The challenge with the mask is you have one eye that's missing from part 3. So that's blacked out with a black panties piece of tarp behind it, so you can't see.
Yeah.
Then you're looking out one eye. So anybody who's ever put a hockey mask on, you've got tunnel vision. You can't see left or right. You see straight forward. You can't even see your toes when you're walking.
Yeah. So, I guess this is an individual question for me. The chase scenes, you're always walking. There's not like too much running and stuff like that. But which one of your victims was your favorite like reaction and then like runaway attempt? Like who was your favorite chase?
Well, I always say, Jason always walks,
Yeah.
and he gets from point A to point B by having Scotty beam him up, put him down. But I really took the one where I twisted the girl's head off after I pulled her out of the window. I just thought that was just cool.
Yeah.
Just the way it was done, and then the other girl didn't know what was coming when I went around to open the door and sliced her up.
Really? Okay. And then so from Eli, I think I actually in a way kind of asked this, but this is a really good one. So how was it playing such a silent, yet also such a powerful and emotionally driven role? And what did you put into that?
Eli, I think, one of the things I put into it was the purity. When you're in the military, you learn to march 30 inches all around. When you're kind of big, you naturally walk authoritatively.
Right.
You don't mean to, but it's natural. So to pick up the Jason part was pretty simple for me. I've always been a Universal horror fan, so I liked how Frankenstein just walked in. But at the same time, Tom McLaughlin asked me not to be a zombie. So the Jason I created through Tom's advice was one that was always thinking. So Frankenstein, if you think when he comes back to life, like with the electricity, he's always connecting the dots of the brain. So through the movie, he starts thinking a little bit. And if you think at Jason, he's tilting his head of curiosity, like what's going on, or he hears a voice and he turns quickly, angrily, and then when Tommy calls him, maggot head and stuff, he just takes off into the water to show anger. I'm coming to get you.
Right.
So I think one of the things was just that I was just naturally large. And it gives me a chance to be more forceful than I am as a human being, like right now talking.
Right.
I just get to kick ass and take names, pretty much.
Yeah. That's fantastic. And then, so I mean, there's another question from Rich. Why always tall people? I want to take a guess at that, and it is for exactly what you're saying. When you are large like that, you have this natural form of intimidation that comes around.
Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah.
And in a character like I had, the nice thing about playing Jason for me is I'm naturally kind of thick.
Right.
I'm kind of big. When I walk, from being ex-military, I walk authoritatively. It was just natural, so I still walk the same way today. The interesting thing about it is, some people try to walk like me or, be like me when they're putting the costume on.
Right.
When I put the costume on, I don't have to do anything. I can just stand there and take 2 steps and blow people's minds because I'm the same physical size I was over 30 years ago.
Yeah, so it was a GIF, I think, just a small graphic changing of you walking out of that barn that was just posted on Facebook recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I went through the comments and it brought joy to me to see that like you literally just said, you could just take 2 steps and just blow people's worlds.
Now you got to remember,
so
we did that in January of this year.
Right.
That's me.
That was out on your property here?
On my ranch,
Yeah.
in full wardrobe, walking out of the barn, and people would look at that and go, what part of the movie is that? They don't realize I'm the same structural size. The wardrobe I still have is spot on.
Yeah.
So I have the capacity to put it on today and look no different than I did in 1986 because, you're not looking at my ugly mug. You're looking at my physical characteristics.
Right. So then we got Jeremy, and Jeremy wants to know what the all-time favorite weapon was.
Jeremy, let me think about that one. I don't know if it was all time because I got to have a Batman utility belt and I put good usage to all of those weapons.
Sure did.
But I will tell you, the one that was fun for me was the spear. Not the killing of the spear, but taking a real spear and smashing it through a real Volkswagen window.
Yeah.
With my power, with my force, and no breakaway.
So cool.
It's not fake.
Oh.
That's pure adrenaline and power.
Wow. That's awesome. That's sweet. That was one of specifically because it's so close to the beginning of the movie. That part I was like, do windshields do that? And then my dad was like, those windshields did that though. Like
that was a
old
real
cars.
windshield.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
They were trying to figure out, should we put a breakaway window in there? And the director asked, what do you think? I said, I don't know. I think I can put the spear through it. And he goes, okay, let's do it with the regular windshield and see what happens. And I had to make sure when I hit forcefully that it didn't just bounce off.
Because that would cause more problems than if
it would hurt too for me. So, but I hit that, and if you go back and look at it, you'll notice I hit right above the steering wheel on the driver's side, but I end up going through the seat in the passenger side.
Oh,
and that's my momentum going from the passenger side to driver's side with the spear, and then going down forcibly through the passenger seat.
Right.
So. That's what you can tell it's real. Everything is real and it's no fake.
The director's wife, wasn't it? The girl who was in the driver's seat of the car.
Yeah. Almost got her.
Yeah. How much of that was cut? That scene right there, then.
There's a scene where she ducks. Thank goodness she ducked. She's supposed to go down, and the stunt coordinator said, "Just don't go down. Go under the dash." Because in Volkswagens those days, underneath the dash was wide open. So. When she went down, it was perfect. She went down out of sight. Then we changed over to a stuntman, Michael Nomad, with the wig on. And it was from the backside.
Dude.
Yeah, the backside looking at me with the camera, the POV. So thank goodness Michael went all the way down. I got him a little bit, not a lot, just enough to make a mark. But if he hadn't went all the way down into the belly of the Volkswagen just like she did, I'd have got him.
Yeah, and then because my personal, I think, favorite kill from that entire scene is when you pike her down into the river itself.
Correct.
What was the effect process for that then?
That was her laying in the water.
Oh, yeah, okay. Wow.
She's laying in the water, and I got up on a little platform, maybe a foot up, so I'm out of camera frame,
Yeah.
and physically jumped down, feet on each side of her head, and then just when I stabbed and just stopped. And then they
So
came
it's
back,
just
did a
like
POV where it went all the way through the dummy.
oh wow, that's awesome. And then I gotta check my phone for the second question, or the final question. I think is from my editor, the person who helps me do these videos. Oh, that's right. So he was specifically curious about the prosthetic section. So like your ears and everything aside from the mask. What was it? How long did that take? And what was it like to wear that?
It took about 5 hours in totality to get it on in the beginning.
Whoa.
It was, pretty rough around the edges. It was a prosthetic hood about an inch thick.
Oh, okay.
And I'd get most of it on, then they had to do the eyes and the black makeup around my eyes and put it into, that's the maggot head piece of it. And then once we got past the maggot head piece of it, they were able to take the front of it off. So it would slide over my head. It greased my head down.
Right.
They glue it down to the top of my chest so it didn't move
Like a
here.
whole big like.
And then they black out my eyes with grease pencil, just like in the military.
Right.
And then I put the mask on.
And so the shot where you come back to life in the coffin and your eye opens, that's your eyeball.
Okay, so that eyeball's not mine.
Okay, I don't think so.
Well, it was supposed to be.
Okay.
I was on set with first director Christopher Swift, who did all the special effects. Second unit was shooting. They said, okay, we need to get CJ back off set. We got to do the maggot scene. And I was shooting on set, so they were going to wait for me. And Chris has green eyes like I. And he said, well, I can just put in the makeup around my eye if you want to do it, because it's just a POV, it's a close-up.
Right.
So Chris put on the makeup. They put real maggots on his little eye.
Yeah.
And then they had a maggot wrangler with a Q-tip pushing the maggots away from his eyelid.
No paycheck big enough for that. I
Yeah,
couldn't do it.
so, yeah, Christopher Swift is his name. He'll
That's-
always be my
wow.
hero.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of course, I'd have done it at the end of the day. I didn't even know, and they told me afterward that I didn't have to. I said, okay. I mean, I didn't mind, but
wrangler.
yeah, maggot wrangler with a Q-tip pushing him away
I
from his
want to
eye.
know how you get that job.
Probably just being lucky.
Maggot wrangler.
Remember I said sometimes
Yeah,
luck?
you just right place, right time. I guess.
Yeah.
That's nuts. And then, what was it like walking into the water? Like, was the prosthetic an issue with the water throughout the movie, or was it?
It
kind of
wasn't
just-
an issue per se. I mean, two things. It was a stagnant lake in Covington, Georgia. So they didn't tell me about water moccasins, and they didn't tell me about leeches. They just said, go, soldier. So I took off in full wardrobe, and I went as far as I could.
Right.
And when I got up to my shoulders, I just ducked underwater and held my breath as long as I could to that part of the scene. Didn't think nothing of it. Came up out of the water, turned around, came back out. I was just soaked, obviously. Did it one time, one take, successful. And they did a close-up of me out in the water and going underwater. You know, you close your eyes in the middle of the night. You're not going to look around and see if you can even see anything.
Right.
But I mean, as far as how everything was done, some of it was just straight up power, me
Right.
doing
Right.
my thing, going through the wall, going through the door, being hooked up to a cable on my back, getting shot with a shotgun and being jerked back in the air.
Yeah.
Those are just things that were part of the stunts.
What were they shooting you with?
Well, they were shooting me with a shotgun that had, fake blast, but
So
the
it's
cable,
like an air pressure type.
well, it was just a regular shotgun making noise.
Oh wow. Okay.
But you got to realize I'm in a harness and there's a cable hooked onto my back.
Right. Right.
So when the trigger went, the cable PSI took me airborne
Launches you.
off the ground, and then I just landed as best I could on my back.
And so, like with the like handguns scenes too, where they shoot you and like the holes start appearing, is that just like?
That's just squids, they're called. They put me in a leather vest, and they had squids on me, and with blood behind them, so when they hit, they would explode outward.
Pop out?
So it's kind of like, somebody using a vest and being shot with a gun, pretty much. I mean, it hurts.
Okay. Yeah, that was
Maybe
what I
not
was
as
wondering.
severe as a gun, obviously, because you're not going to get bruised ribs and stuff. But
Right.
you get bruises because it's just a piece of leather and a squid that blows out. And when it blows, it is just that. It is a squid.
Yeah. Okay.
You're going to know you got hit.
Wow. Ouch. Could only imagine. Was there any substantial injury? Like, did you sustain any actual like injury throughout the shooting of 6? Or?
Bruises. That's about it. A couple headaches. I mean, nothing substantial. I got hurt more doing 13 Fanboy,
Okay.
a year ago than I did in Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Doing all my own stunts and stuff, thinking I was bad, not realizing that when you're young, you tuck and roll, So I was pretty. I had about a 6 by 6 inch black and blue bruise
Ah,
and a torn abdomen muscle from the fight scene I did with somebody. But
really?
it was a good fight scene.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
have to check it out.
yeah, it'll be coming out. It's a really good fight scene, as a matter of fact.
I'm stoked.
We spent half a night doing just all the fights and tumbles and being thrown into trees and flips and taking body shots.
And you're still doing all of it.
Why, I'll think about it next time after that one. I didn't realize how much it hurt till I got off set and it started getting black and blue the next day. And
Right.
within a week, I couldn't physically get myself out of bed because my muscles were
Yeah.
tore in my midsection.
You hear that from a lot of skaters now, like Rodney Mullen and Tony Hawk, that are finally up there in age. They're like, I don't fucking know if I could do the things. Tony Hawk's still out there killing it. Rodney Mullen just likes to stay on the floor.
Well, you think about it. I mean, Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director of Part 6, has put a new script together
Oh.
for Part 13, and he's been out there promoting it, trying to work with a couple of individuals to get the film back to the studio. He's put it together where it's more of a spin-off from Part 6 into what would be considered a series now, rather than shifting left and right. He has made comment on podcast and asked me if I would consider resurrecting. And my answer is real simple because a lot of the fans ask me if I do it again. And, if I could do the physicality of it, because I want to do my own stunts,
Right.
yes. If I could deliver a product as good or better than Part 6, yes.
Right.
But if I couldn't deliver the product, I wouldn't do it. I'm in a place where the monetary side of it is great, but the passion to deliver the quality, because I think we did a good product in 1986, and I'd hate to hurt the product by not being able to deliver those stunts and everything I did myself.
Right. And that
in the
passion,
new one.
that's
Right.
what drives the whole thing.
But I'd look at it seriously. I mean, there's still a lot of stuff I could probably do. You don't think about it at the moment when it's a stunt.
Right.
You go into zone, and when it's time to go through the window, you just go. You're not thinking about obstacles or opportunities or getting hurt. First thing you're thinking is breaking the glass with your elbow, and the second thing you're thinking about is tucking and rolling on the other side.
Right.
So like I said, I'm a little older. I don't tuck and roll as I used to.
More thuds occur now.
Thump.
Yeah.
Oops. I learned that about 3 years ago with my horse, Desperado. I got on him. I got about 40 feet. He put me into the fence.
Oof.
So I never got on him again. I didn't get rid of him. I kept him. I love him. But I bought another horse, Palomino, that's more of a rider. I'm not qualified to ride him, to be quite honest. But I'm not getting rid of him.
With you there.
Yeah, I'm keeping him. He's just amazing.
I've heard a phrase, and I've only heard it around here from older folks, that all horses do is eat money and shit work. How do you feel about that?
Well, I shoveled out the stables today,
Yeah.
so they do it's again, I go back to a number. You have to realize that horses live about 25 years, give or take a year.
That's not really all.
And, you got to realize you're going to spend, conservatively $300-400 a month
Ooh.
for
Actually.
25 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So do the math.
Yeah. That's,
You got to have enough to. Now, a lot of people do sell their horses and get rid of them. And my thing is that I've got them at 12 years old. They're 15 now. And one of us will die. But until I die, I ain't getting rid of them. So that's it. They're in part of my budget.
nice.
So they're good. I just took them to the vet yesterday. They all got their baby shots. And last week, they all got their pedicures and manicures. And they're all good.
That's awesome. And how'd you end up with alpacas? Where was that?
My wife, she wanted to have a couple alpacas, so she wanted one, and she said, but you can't have one without another because they need a friend.
Yep.
Who knew?
Yeah, my wife is pulling the same thing with me right now.
And then she decided, well, you know what? We need one more just as an oddball. Okay. But who knew one of the ones we got originally was pregnant and dropped another one, so now we got 4. So, but they're great. Kids love them. They come up to you, they run around with you, and they're very friendly. Don't misunderstand. But,
Yeah, llamas are the more aggro ones.
they're the ones that are they're real aggressive, but they're great. Don't misconstrue. It's just, again, it's a responsibility.
Yeah. So do you guys like shave them and sell the wool, or like?
We don't sell it, but we get them shaved, and we just
okay.
give it to whoever shaves it, so they can make tables and stuff.
Yeah.
They can make material and yarn out of
An
them.
alpaca wool would be pretty impressive.
It is.
Yeah.
So, but we don't sell it. It's not our thing. It's just their pets.
Fair.
Just like having bees, they're pets.
The bees thing is really cool. I would love to see that sometime.
They give us honey
like,
and stuff. So it's
so cool.
just bees are bees.
Well, and like so I have a lot of like really hippie friends. And they're like, we shouldn't be doing that. It's not natural, blah blah blah. But I've seen some of these bees. You could give them the chance to leave. They don't want to. They're
Bees,
content.
from my experience, and I've taught over the years that, 50-50. Sometimes they fly on you, sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
It's really, they can come out of the hive anytime they want. If the queen wants to take off and split,
Then they can
and
take
they'll
off and
follow.
split.
It's
Yeah.
not, but we need more bees, period, because everything you eat that's a vegetable and flowers and apples and
Yeah.
strawberries, they need the pollination
The
from the
trees
bees,
that give us
trees,
oxygen.
oxygen.
And
So
all of that.
there's a connectivity there. You have to think about it. It'd be nice if everybody had a beehive in their backyard.
Yeah.
To be honest, honeybees.
Have you ever watched the show Black Mirror?
No.
Give it a chance. There's this episode. It's like a modern day Twilight Zone. That's kind of based off of. It's like based like 10 years from now, right? On like this weird dystopia tech future. One of the episodes, each one's a bit different. There's not too much consistency between them. They're like individual tales, you know. One of these episodes in Black Mirror is robotic bees because we've killed off all the bees, and so the only way that we can actually sustain our ecosystems is with these artificially intelligent bees, and then the episode spins from there. But I mean, the show is just crazy, and that's one of my favorite episodes because it actually shows you like what would happen if we didn't have bees. You know, if these even if these computer bees didn't exist, we'd be screwed.
Right.
Like off of something so fragile. That's why I love that you love statistics so much, because for me, I love like what are those really really long elaborate systems? It's like dominoes that lead to a pulley that knock that over. That I love the butterfly effect. I love that. It's so fascinating to me to watch one thing get knocked over and then see some grand thing occur miles away.
To me, that's just the old domino effect.
Yeah,
You can let it roll. Bees are very unique. You can buy a bee hive for about $200,
right.
over here at Shipton's.
Yep.
And in fact, I have 3 new bees coming in next month. You can buy 10,000 bees and a queen for
You
about
can
$150.
Bees?
Yeah.
Wow.
I've got 30,000 bees coming in next month. You can actually buy a box that has 10,000 or 3 pounds, 10,000 bees, with a queen, UPS, right to your door.
You could just order bees to someone's house.
Right now, if you want online.
Wow, yeah. That's crazy.
So I mean, my point is, for $500, you've got a beehive in your backyard. Give it a year, and you can go out there and take, 10, 15 pounds of honey out of it.
Which is way more honey than anybody needs. That's
Pretty much.
Honey. Yeah.
And then the thing is, it's if you have, where you have breathing issues, with dust and stuff, particles, they always say allergies. They always say, eat bee honey, but you got to eat the honey from your area.
Yep.
Can't be that mixed stuff at the store.
Yeah.
It's got to be local because it's already got the pollination in it.
Yeah.
And it helps with your the way you breathe and your allergies.
So you guys haven't gotten to see it yet, I don't think. You moved here in August
Yes.
of 2020, so post-pandemic. We usually, Billings has a farmer's market downtown.
Mm-hmm.
It is so much fun because it's all local people, basically people who live like out on Buffalo Trail, stuff like that, like out by Malt and whatnot, selling local honey and like all of the assortments of goods, and there's music, and I think it's been a while, which is really sad, but there was a girl playing violin down there last time just beautifully, and they block off all of downtown for it. It's really awesome.
I'm looking forward to it. It'll be fun.